Welcome to AASHTO Resource Q&A. We're taking time to discuss construction materials testing and inspection with people in the know, from exploring testing problems and solutions to laboratory best practices and quality management. We're covering topics important to you.
Welcome to AASHTO Resource Q&A. I am Brian Johnson.
And I am Kim Swanson. And today we have a guest with us, and he's a returning guest. So, Brian, do you want to introduce him? Because I know I'm not going to do it justice.
Yeah, we're happy to have Bryce Hanlon back from the Oklahoma DOT, geotechnical design engineer. And last, when we spoke with Bryce, when we met Bryce, he was just a DOT baby with 1 month, 1 month old experience under the tutelage of quite a few really experienced, great people. So at this point, Bryce has got a year and a half under his belt and quite a bit of experience. So we're going to talk to him about what's been going on there and get some updates because that episode was tracking pretty well. So I think people will be interested to hear what's going on now. So welcome. Long intro.
I'll take it.
For Bryce. So yeah, welcome, Bryce.
Oh, cool. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
After a year and a half, moving from, I mean, quite a few years. Now, he's not new to work. I think
Right.
in that episode, you had been with consulting firms for, I think 18 years.
18 years.
Something
Yeah,
like
I'm
that.
age is getting higher and higher pretty quick. But yeah, so I worked in the consulting industry for over 18 years. So like right out of high school, I worked in a lab, a geotechnical lab. I did drilling. You know, I kind of did all the things that a geotech engineer would do. And then, yeah, I kind of made the move over here in early 2023. And, you know, the main reason was it because I saw that there was a gap at the DOT level with needing somebody to kind of help with geotechnical processes and get kind of the geotechnical industry up to what I would say would kind of be the necessary standard. The geotech is kind of the forgotten part of design quite a bit. So what I did was I kind of used my experience on the consulting side to, identify issues kind of with our processes here and kind of work towards improving it. And then I'm using a lot of my contacts and resources with the consultants to kind of get them, informed on what our plans are and get feedback from them on kind of just different things like our processes, our kind of how we do invoicing, just kind of all the day-to-day stuff that like we kind of talked about. It's not necessarily the engineering stuff. It's just how can we get these projects done more efficiently and get everyone to where we can have repeatable processes and going forward have a good future. So it is a lot. Yeah, like I said, engineering is not really my it's not really my job anymore. I'm an engineer, but it's really kind of making sure all the geotechnical engineering throughout the state gets done correctly. So.
When you started a year and a half ago, you had some ideas about what you'd be doing and what has changed for you as far as like what your day-to-day job duties are as a geotechnical engineer?
Whenever we did this first time, ODOT was just kind of doing this modernization initiative thing where all the design groups are going to be kind of grouped together. We had a very separated, we had a roadway division, bridge division. Geotech was kind of we had a geotech engineer within the bridge group. We had a geotech engineer / pavement engineer within the roadway group. And kind of what they were seeing as those groups were kind of going to be unifying in the future, they needed to have somebody come in to kind of work with both of those groups, but also with the increased reliance on consultants for completing a lot of the work. They need to have somebody to be able to kind of lead that communication while, being the central figure between like I said, the design groups and those. So the company I worked for as a consultant did a lot of design work. So I was kind of the in-house geotech engineer for those. So I understood how a lot of the DOT projects work. So I basically came here and worked with the in-house engineers here and the consult. So basically I'm kind of the middleman, but I kind of understand all the sides, which makes it easier to get people what they need, and kind of be able to have everyone speaking the same language. I can speak both geotech and designer a little bit. I'm more geotech, but I'm more fluent in geotech, I would say. But the designers, I can at least with working directly with the designers at my old company, I was able to kind of figure out, geotech is a million different things you can give somebody, but you eventually figure out like what data is actually important, and how things need to be delivered so that they can do what they need to do efficiently. So
Well, you say that you were a middleman, kind of like it was a bad thing. Middlemans are
no,
necessary. They're so
no, I
necessary,
would
just like
have
what you
loved.
described.
Yeah, I would have loved to have. So whenever I used to be a consultant, it was hard at the DOT level. Like there wasn't really someone here that you could call that you felt like, So whenever I had to call here, I would always have to call, either a bridge engineer or a roadway engineer, and which is fine. But then they don't understand. Like, so if you're out in the field, and say it had been raining for like 2 weeks, and the site was wet, and I'm like, hey, we're not going to be able to get out there, or hey, we need more money for dozer work, or all this stuff. Like, they don't understand the cost associated with this stuff. They didn't understand just the time associated with this. They didn't understand weather delays, because everybody that's a designer never has weather delays. You're inside every day. It's great. But with the geotech, there's all this, like, there's all these variables that, like, just you don't really, you can't unless you've experienced it. You really just don't understand kind of how things go. So yeah, with me, if the geotech will come to me, like a lot of times I'll get calls from them in the field, and they're like, I'm running into this issue. What do you think we should do? I can either help them directly, or I can be like, hey, let me reach out to the bridge engineer or the whatever, roadway engineer, and be like, hey, they're having this issue. I've had this issue in the past. This is what I would recommend we do, and typically we come to a solution that way. But before, there was no, you kind of were just, you'd hope that they'd accept it, or sometimes you just have to eat the cost, because you still have to get the work done, obviously. But yeah, that's a whole, getting paid for all the work that's required to finish these projects. That was a big, initiative that I helped with whenever I started. So
Yeah, I know one of the missions that you had starting out was to try to get the data to the consultants that they needed to do an effective job, right? Because you
yeah,
were on the other end. Now, how has that been going? Have you been able to make any headway on that?
geotechnical data, the processes for how that's delivered has changed over time. Like, it used to just be, mailed in, typewritten reports. And then, so we had like a filing cabinet of those. And then we had a bunch of reports that were, PDF copies. And then now we're moving into, there's going to be PDF, and then there's like a 3D modeling deliverable component that eventually is going to be there. We're not quite there yet, but they had all these filing cabinets that they have been for the last, I mean, I've been here almost 2 years, and I think they've been doing it since I've been here, but they are scanning and logging old reports, bridge reports, roadway reports, all the different things, and then creating a GIS database to where you can search it across the state. So like, if the geotech consultant has a project in wherever county, Oklahoma, they can get on this website and get the most information. Like, all the information that we have, they can have access to it quickly. Now, this process, I mean, it takes forever. It's going to take a while. I, I would say they're maybe halfway done. I mean, maybe not even halfway inputting all this data. They are getting to the more modern. They started with the old. So like, we had reports from like the 50s, like, so 50s, 60s, just in a filing cabinet. You're having to figure out, like, obviously, I don't know if people were using GPS like coordinates to track locations back then. A lot of it's, stations and stuff. So a lot of the work is just figuring out what they had, and where it's from, and then, yeah, getting it into this database that's user friendly. It's pretty cool. We have kind of like it's not actually out to the consultants yet. Right now, it's in a internal phase. We have a meeting this week, actually, to where we're going to figure out, like, what's the next step to get to what we have. Like, I'd rather be out there and it not be complete than so maybe there is a project or two that it will help them on. Like, right now, kind of what we've been doing is, if somebody needs something, they'll call me, like, hey, do you have any reports? And then I'll just kind of ask materials if they have any. I'll ask the designers, hey, have you guys worked on any projects in this area? And then we can look at that way. But once this is done, I mean, literally in 5 minutes, they can have all of the geotechnical reports that we have, over the last 70 years, apparently, in there. So that'll be great. I mean, that's going to be a super useful resource. I've been selling it also to the universities for research and data. Data is king at these schools. So I'm like, hey, we're going to have all of our soil data for however many decades going back. Like you guys can use this for future stuff. It's going to be kind of a helpful. I always say this too with like geotechnical reports and stuff. Like a lot of times you just do them and you just really don't like see the value in it. And like, yes, you're helping the designer for that project, but like I think having your work, put into this like database or like historical log where it's like, hey, maybe in 60 or 70 years, whenever they're replacing this bridge that you drilled originally, they're going to be using your data for that. It's kind of a cool like, it kind of adds added importance. I feel like to your work and. Like I said, I think long term it's going to be very helpful. Like doing work and only using it once and not, maximizing the benefit is kind of silly. It's a big cost savings thing here. We're trying to figure out ways to obviously save money. So if we can, have this data to where whenever we scope new projects, they don't have to basically start from scratch. They have they kind of have an idea of what soil's out there. They know how deep the bedrocks is. They know they have sulfates in that area. Like there's all these things that they can kind of pre-plan for to where they show up on site. Maybe we can do reduced scope of borings and testing potentially. Or if we know that there's going to be problem stuff, we could even increase testing. Be like, hey, we know this is an issue out here. Let's try to target where these issues are, and then be able to build the project without any issues afterwards. So. Data is king. I'm learning that here. We have so much data here that no one's really using. So this is like one of the ways that I think with geotech, we can, it's something like we only have so many reports every year. I mean, it's a lot, but I think that's something that's easily you can keep up with. So once we're caught up, I think it's going to be easy to maintain. And then, like I said, it's going to be a sustainable resource going forward.
That just seems really useful and really awesome. And if for our listeners who don't know what GIS is, that's Geographic Information System. So it's like a digital map thing. But just in case someone didn't know that. But do you know of any other DOTs that are using this system, like having this centralized mappable database for geotechnical stuff?
I know a lot of them use it for a bunch of different things. They use it for traffic information. I know. I went to last year I went to a conference in Missouri, and I know they have a similar system for like they call them like geotechnical. I forget what they call it, but basically it's like underground caves, like potential like issue areas where they've mapped and identified like that type of stuff. So like they know if you have a geotechnical thing in that area, but it's not the actual report. So this is, geotechnical reports it's owned by the state. Like, so these consultants, obviously we have them done by many different consultants. So it's going to be public information that these consultants are obviously developing. So I don't know what other states' policies are on that, but we're basically like, well, you did it for us. We own it now. Everyone gets to have that information. Like we want the product to be better for, going forward for us. So we don't want everyone to have to necessarily start from scratch. There are obviously companies that do more work than others, so they kind of have had a benefit in the past because they have this large database of past projects and stuff that they can use. Now we're kind of evening the playing field for everyone. So, I don't know. I haven't seen it, but I think once we get this developed, I'm sure I'll present it at different things, and I think it's a good idea. It's one of them things that geotechnical data it doesn't really go. It doesn't change that much, obviously. Your soil and stuff like water levels fluctuate, like things do fluctuate, but typically like rock elevations, soil types, that general information isn't going to change too much. So being educated on that whenever you show up for like scoping projects, it's like I said, being as accurate as we can with scoping geotechnical projects is kind of, budget's everything. You don't want to over budget things because that could be money potentially used somewhere else. And we're trying to get it to where it's as accurate as possible. It's not gonna be perfect. It's still soil. It's still, it still can vary to 5 feet apart from each other. But being as close as we can and as educated as we can is the direction we're going. So.
Yeah, I want to talk about the change management process a little bit. You mentioned getting information out that you can now so it's usable instead of waiting, right? I think that is a really important thing to do, especially when you're talking about a scale that you're dealing with, because once you start getting companies using it and other entities that may have competing data, or similar data, once they start using it, if they see conflicts early on, with not maybe it wasn't even with the data, maybe it was the way it was handled, uh, but that would allow you to troubleshoot early on so that you don't end up with a bigger mistake down the road and have to redo it, right?
Correct.
So I think that's a really good point. I wanted to make sure everybody heard that part and understood that aspect of it, because sometimes there's a tendency for organizations to try to control the change in a way that maybe isn't in their best interest. And I don't know if you're fighting against that or not, or if that's just kind of the way it's going. But usually you have people with different ideas about like what the rollout should look like. Uh,
Mhm.
can you talk about that at all?
I think they're looking for people to be more proactive than reactive. I think the DOT in general has been very slow to do a lot of things. So this is one of them things they're just like, once it's ready, let's or even if it's not completely ready, let's just get it out there. And like I said, we can get feedback. Like before it's finally done, we can get these consultants using it and see how it looks with them, using this data to scope projects. And like I said, I don't see the negatives. I think that's the thing. Like there's no something is better than nothing. That's in this situation. So I would rather just get it out there to the world, and then if they have feedback, that'll give us plenty of time to kind of get changes in before all the data's in there, and then it'll be a fully, it'll be an A plus. Like I said, it may start out as C, but it will eventually get there. But like right now, it's non-existent. So let's just it's going to help us regardless, no matter what it is. Because right now, like I said, literally people are just reaching out if they don't have information handy. Like, do you have anything? And it's, it takes me a while to try to dig through, old project numbers, and it's just right now it's not efficient at all. So like I think even with just I think the newest reports right now they have is like the early 2000s, like up to like 2005 or six. So all basically everything since like 6, 7 on is a more modern deliverable where it was literally just like a PDF that was made on the computer thing. I think they're almost to the point where they're going to start uploading those, and once those kind of start getting in there, I think it's going to be that we have all of that data. Like that data hasn't gone. There's a lot of gaps probably in that early 2000s forward, because there's just like one person throws away one bound report that's gone forever. It's just it wasn't a sustainable way to manage data. But yes, I hear everyone's very supportive on us just modernizing. I mean, not that they're giving me like a free what to do whatever I want kind of thing, but they're like fix it, make things better. Like if it doesn't work out, that's fine. We can always go back to how it was. But they want us to try new things and definitely try to get things progressing going forward.
That's great to hear. I know
Mhm.
DOTs can often get a bad rap from the public of being
Yeah,
kind of stodgy old, unchanging organizations. But one of the reasons that we had our meeting the first time was because we know that ODOT's not like that, and I think it's great for people to hear that and get to understand that people are really trying new things and are trying to innovate and deliver for everybody. I mean, just think of the speed of project delivery that you're going to have eventually with people being able to speed through, hey, are there any issues here? Nope. Move forward, right?
exactly.
And it's like that's probably unfathomable.
Geotech is not, like I said, the most progressive of engineering disciplines. I would say it's, a lot of the testing techniques and everything have been relatively unchanged for a while. So, I mean, just kind of having more data available and changing scoping, like we're moving the geotechnical, basically within our workflow, we're moving it up in the cycle. So basically, as soon as our 30% plans are basically once the alignment is kind of finalized, we're going to get out there and start doing geotech, and that'll allow more time to adjust if there are any. We'll be able to do kind of all the normal testing and stuff we do, but it also gives us a little bit of time. Like there is some adjustments that need to be had due to field conditions. Like say we find that there are all these problem issues out in the site. Um, it'll allow us to have time to do potentially additional borings or do additional testing to kind of figure out like, okay, well, how bad is it? What do we need to do to fix it? So trying to get everything going. Like I said, I think this will help kind of get that early process. Like you have as much information as you possibly can as early on. It should allow for earlier data collection and earlier kind of I think the whole thing here is they want to get everybody the geotechnical stuff, obviously as soon as possible so that we can just get this. They want it to become a well-oiled machine. I think it's kind of the whole thing. You talked about a little bit with DOT, like I said, a lot of the work has been sent out to like the consultants. So we are trying to develop processes that'll become more, it'll work for in-house projects that we're designing here, but also will work for the consultants. So like getting stuff as early as we can to the consultants will kind of allow them to kind of, work with the information sooner. And then just communicating with them back to us is not as efficient as even here. So like I think everyone just sees this as like one of the few things that you can move up, and it's really not going to affect the geotechnical data that much. So it'll be kind of a early, not a checkbox, but it's a thing that you can be like, hey, this is done. If you need more data, we can get it, and there's still time to get it. So for sure.
Yeah, and you mentioned additional borings and that
Mhm.
and that indicates to me that there would still be some sort of confirmatory testing once a project is moving, right? Even if you have this data and your system is all up to speed. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's going to be it's a supplemental thing. Like we're never going to get away from doing field testing, but we literally show up to every job and act like we've never been. So it's like we're doing drilling on the moon. Like nobody knows anything. You know what I mean? So that the idea is you show up knowing kind of what you're getting into, and then yes, you can do some like confirmation holes or something. Basically, like, hey, we think rock's here. We think it's this type of rock. Let's do a couple holes here to make sure that's it. And then with the soils, unless there's like a lot of earthwork, like it shouldn't change too much. If you do a real thorough soil survey, like now, like in 20 years, like if they have to, redo the road or they do an overlay or something like that, the stuff shouldn't really change all that much. So it's more of like, like for now, we're probably still doing kind of full projects, but in 20 years, like, whenever all this data is in the system, they better not be doing the same amount of holes that we just did. Like we better be saving money or I'm going to be upset.
Right. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm almost afraid to ask this question, but who's been entering all this data into this system?
They're engineers, so they're geotechs. Now, I don't know if
Okay.
that's a good thing or bad thing. Our technology skills sometimes is, we're not the most technological engineers, but they know like what's included in the reports. They know like what information is. So they're categorizing it by like report type, the county it's in, what type of testing was done in like all these things are going to be searchable in this GIS map whenever it's done. So you don't want to just have like a random person putting these in there because they won't
No.
categorize anything correctly. So that's probably why it's a lot of reports, but they're also trying to categorize it by all these different identifiers. So it is a time consuming process. But once you get into the PDF world where you can just search, it should be a lot quicker than having to like scan in a hard copy. Like you can't really search those. I mean, I guess there's software that you can probably do, but I don't know if they're using. I think they're literally like reading them and like identifying the stuff in there. So, yeah. So we have geotechs doing it, which, like I said, it may not be the most efficient way, but at least I think it'll be done correctly.
Shift away from the specificity of what you've been working on and get more into some general stuff related to change management, if that's okay. So, um, can you talk about some of the lessons you've learned as a DOT employee since you've been there dealing with change? How do you look at the change management process now after this time that you've been going through?
Change, I think, is harder here than it probably is anywhere, just because I don't know. I think there is so many hoops and stuff you have to go through here that I think people for the most part feel like it's easier just to keep doing what you're doing before you before you like you actually make big change. But then here we got lucky. We have the chief engineer here, Brian Taylor, he wants change. Like he's been working at the DOT for a while, and a lot of the issues like that I'm working on, that other people working on, are pretty glaringly obvious. Like whenever you're a consultant, you see them. Working here, you see them, and you're just like, well, this is stuff that needs to be changed. Like we can't keep doing the same thing, and we really need to, like now, like Brian is retiring this year, mid-year, and he's got a list of stuff he wants to get done. I kind of, whenever I started, he was part of the developing the list of stuff I needed to work on, but He's got a lot of stuff he wants to get done even before he retires kind of mid this year as well. And then his replacement, TJ Dill, is progressive as well. Actually used to work with him at my other consulting firm, but he's got a great, he wants to move things forward as well. Like he doesn't like the idea of keep doing these same things and allowing the DOT to kind of, like I said, the world is kind of modernizing towards consultants doing a lot of the work. That's just how the industry is. I mean, obviously, whenever you work for the government, there's like limits in pay and like benefits, and there's all these things that you just don't have like a free market kind of stuff that you have with consultants. So you got to embrace the consultant stuff, which is a lot of the change I think that's happening here. Getting the internal ODOT staff to be open to helping the consultants, because a lot of times, it is like a pain point. I feel like a little bit because they typically consultants will make more money than the DOT people, and so like there's always this like chip in your shoulder kind of stuff here. But what they got to understand is like the point of our job is so we're allocating the taxpayers' money to basically improve the transportation system in Oklahoma. That's our whole job. So whether we're doing the work or whether these consultants are doing the work, like our job is to make sure this gets done as efficiently and productively as possible. So that's kind of how I've embraced it. It's like, well, we have all this information, we have all these things that we can improve. Let's just start working towards them. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, I guess I've been here two years. I still have a to-do list, but we've made kind of big changes. And like, even if you ask the geotechnical consultants and even the people here, like the design people here, like there's like noticeable benefits that everyone can kind of see. And it's a thing where like I think they're trying to do this in all the different areas. I'm just kind of a new area, so like there was nobody before me in this job, so I kind of came in and filled an obvious gap. These ones that are like the pre-existing, like roadway divisions, bridge divisions, improvements there, I think are a little bit more difficult because it's way more established. Like I kind of was given like a open, like a whatever, like blank canvas, just like, hey, make this kind of way you want it to be, improve things. It doesn't have to be perfect, but let's get things going in a direction of where this is getting better. And I feel like I've done okay with that so far. But yeah, it's the DOT, man. I'm still not fully, like, I still don't fully understand why everything is what it is here, but I'm learning the processes and being more patient. I feel like I have developed more patience, but you can still get stuff done here. It takes a little bit more of it takes, like I said, more patience, but also an open mind. Like you really got to get the right people on your side here. And once you they see kind of they kind of see the direction you want to go, and they see how it can benefit the public, then typically they're all in. So a lot of it is money, like also, like if you'll save people money, people are all in usually too. That's my biggest selling point for a lot of the stuff. So if you like kind of always talk about the data, is like, well, if they have this data, they want to do as much testing, it'll save us money. It's always that. That's typically the language for kind of the higher ups, but they obviously want things done correctly too.
Now, I know you guys were undergoing one of the big changes, and this sounded like a really difficult challenge for you guys, is consolidating some of the departments, or I don't know if you completely consolidated them or just consolidated certain aspects of what they did, but every division is going to have department heads, and they're going to have protocols and organizational structures, and I answer to this person and not this other person. And how has that all gone?
That's a good question, because that is a thing where whenever you earn a title, it's hard to relinquish any kind of it. I don't know. It is hard. People love titles here. I have learned that here. Like I came from the consulting world where I was just a geotech engineer. I didn't have any fancy title. I literally did geotech reports, and that was kind of here. There's everybody wants a title, and then once you get that title, you definitely don't want to move backwards. So if you, like you said, consolidate different areas into different groups, like you are potentially there's gonna be people that have to take like the back seat to someone else, and it's been weird. There has been times where it's been weird, like but I think if you can kind of explain the bigger goal and like I said, a lot of it is morale, like it kind of keeping people positive about the big picture. It's hard, but yes, that's a pain point. I've learned that here. I think here more than any place too, because I think that is one of the things you pride yourself on here, because whatever, like I said, that is kind of the one thing you work towards here. Like titles here are kind of cool. Like you are like the state, whatever you are here. But yeah, if so like the bridge group and the roadway group, that they merge together, but they still kind of have the titles within there. But there are like CAD people within that. I don't know if their titles changed too much, but the higher ups, most of them kind of kept their same title. Like we still have a state bridge engineer, we still have a state roadway engineer, but they're within the design branch instead of the roadway group or the bridge group, that way. So, but there are other lesser, not lesser, but different titles that I think they've had to adjust their responsibilities. Like some aren't managers necessarily anymore. Some, maybe have different areas that they're working in now. But and then also we within the last couple of weeks, everyone had to come back into the office, which was a big thing as well. So there was kind of all these things that kind of had happened that they're kind of pushing everyone. But I think what's going to come out of it is I think everyone's going to be more. I think the people that are going to be here are going to be people that want to be here and people that are going to make things better. So it is, yeah, it's a fun one. I'm learning about all that. So like, so I have a title. I don't really use it that much, but I don't know. I think there's definitely some that take it way too serious, but whatever.
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
you definitely are going to have that.
Yeah, for sure.
I do wonder also about the process of getting that accomplished.
Yeah.
You come in with this idea, okay, we're going to get these responsibilities handed out, and if you can't really look at it just on paper, like, oh, it makes sense for this person to do this or this
Yep.
position to do this and this position to do this because there are people in those positions, and some of them might be really good at this, and some of them might be really good at this other thing. Uh, and that can be a challenge, right? Figuring out,
Mhm.
okay, well, are we going to do this based on what makes sense for the position or what makes sense for the talent that we currently have? Because you can change later. Like
Oh
this doesn't
yeah.
have to be forever, right? So did
It,
that come into play at all when you guys were determining this?
Yeah, so within my group that is so I kind of manage the paper design group right now, and I've seen kind of other people's groups how it's kind of as well. I think having a task assigned specifically to a person, it needs to be more fluid. I think that's the thing here. I think everything here is so like everybody's in their little boxes. Like if this isn't specifically in my to-do task, I'm not going to do it. And I'm like, no, we got to be where
Yeah.
everyone's like, everybody's working as a group to get the entire, to get the whole thing done. Like we're not just because your little part is done does not mean you can just sit there. If there's other stuff that needs to be done and this person's drowning, like go help them out. And that's like I manage the paper design group, and that's kind of how I'm trying to approach them as well. Like I've kind of reassigned tasks within that group, but then also, we do weekly meetings where I'm like, hey, how busy are you? How busy are you? And then if it is a thing where one person can help the other, we got to do it because that's how I think delays happen and people get further behind is like, if tasks are not appropriately, split up, like you can really put a lot on one person at that time. Maybe that person can handle it, but sometimes they can't, and they can get burned out and stuff. So, um, no, I like things to be more fluid. It comes from the manager. Like the manager really needs to be like more on it. Like they really got to see what's happening and not just like, writing down like you said on a piece of paper. Like this is what your role is, and as soon as that person finishes that, they're sitting there for the rest of the week. That's not good. That doesn't help anyone out. And then I would say our staffing here is probably as low as it's probably been in a while. So, everybody needs to kind of pick up slack when they can. Like there's not really, there's always something that needs to be done. So it needs to definitely be more proactive that way. But I think it's probably like that everywhere. I think everyone's probably having to pick up more slack. I know there's just a shortage, a kind of a staffing shortage everywhere. But here, I think DOT people historically, like you said, it probably is the public. I thought it whenever I worked in consulting, I was like, those people don't do a whole lot some days. You can just tell just from what you hear, like these people are kind of slacking. But then when you get here, you're like, well, I can see why. I mean, maybe they don't know they're supposed to be doing something. Like, you really got to be vocal and be like, "Hey, I need you to do this so that this could be accomplished," kind of thing. But
Yeah, it's
yeah,
a management effort is
100%.
required.
Yeah, and it's a more, I think, a lot of the managers here are engineers, and I think that is a thing where not all engineers are great managers. So like a lot of the people we have now are great. Like I think they're very vocal and they can interact with people well. But if you get a certain type of engineer in a managerial role, you're asking for problems because a lot of them are very introverted and they're just not going to proactively tell somebody that you need to go do this other task that they weren't necessarily assigned, but it would help the group if they were to help. So that's yeah, I feel like we're going a good direction with our leadership here. We have some very, you know, people that want things to be done the right way, and definitely, I'm probably the newest one here by quite a bit. That's kind of in. I'm kind of a semi-leadership role, but a lot of like the division heads and stuff have been here for 5-10 years, and they're about my age, like kind of late 30s, and they're very wanting things to be better. Like they're going to be working here for another couple decades, so they need things to improve now so that their life's not miserable. And when I say, like, I think a lot of times, like, if you get a person that they're going to retire in a couple years, like their level of effort for trying to move things forward is probably not as much as somebody that's going to be around for a while, for sure. So,
Yeah, you definitely see that.
yeah.
I know you've talked about some elements of this already, but I was wondering if any tips for other managers who are relatively new to a position but are dealing with some organizational change and some potential struggles with trying to get staff members to understand the value of those changes and why they should greet them with
Yeah.
a positive a positive feeling and
It,
in a way
it,
to
it's
move forward effectively.
It's hard, man. It is, everybody. So, I think a lot of people, what I've seen is like once they get a job, they're like, okay, well, we talked about this earlier, but like these are my tasks. Like this is what I do. So if you're asking them to do more stuff, they immediately want more money, or they're asking like why this person isn't doing it. I'm like, okay, cool. I get what you're saying, but I think I always emphasize how it's going to make them a better engineer. And like, I'm just like, well, you need to learn different stuff. You need to be more proactive on doing this stuff. Like, you're not always going to you don't always want to be the person that's sitting here, waiting for somebody to give you something. Like, be proactive. Like, if you don't have anything to do, ask if there's something you can help with. Like, be more like that. And then even if you don't work at the DOT forever, if you go into consulting and if you're just sitting there waiting for people to, give you tasks, like, you're never going to amount to anything. Like you're kind of just going to be maybe you'll be, whatever. You'll be in probably the same position for the rest of your life. But just having that, I think just in general, like wanting to be helpful and like the group that I manage is very tiny. So like it's like 2 or 3 people. So we're like whenever there is somebody that's drowning, it's very easy to be like, hey, can you take these tasks associated with pavement design and move it, under these people for at least this week, and then the next week we'll talk about like, hey, were you able to catch up with this? Was this person able to get to where they're not drowning? And then they can kind of go back to their normal tasks after that. But yeah, like it's a tough sell because I think naturally people want to do not all people. A lot of people want to do the bare minimum to get their paycheck and then go home. That's just what I mean. Everybody I think has seen that. I think a lot of the younger-ish people, it's getting kind of worse just from what I've seen. But just I think like you said, emphasizing the big picture and explaining, why things need to be done, why they do, and then explaining how important their job is to the whole ecosystem here. I think is very important. Like pavement design is one of the things here that it was kind of during COVID. We got a massive backlog just with the amount of designs that needed to go out. So then we had to start subbing out that work to the consultants, and that caused a lot of other issues because there's variance in training on how to do pavement designs between them, and there wasn't proper. We didn't. This is all the different things I'm working on, but there wasn't proper like manuals for how to do pavement design. I mean, the processes aren't that difficult, but we don't have like a standardized Oklahoma DOT pavement design guide. And so we were asking these people to perform a service for us without being properly educated on what they needed. So what was happening was they were doing this pavement design work, submitted to us for review, they didn't do anything wrong. So we were actually spending more time reviewing this thing, doing the back and forth with emails and phone calls, and it just ended up being a mess. So literally starting this year, we're doing all pavement design in-house again. And I've told our engineers, like, this is going to work. It's going to require a lot of like you being proactive about your schedules and being organized yourself. I think self-organization and stuff like that is hard for a lot of people. So my duty is basically every week I give them these tasks, but I give them like a big picture thing, be like, hey, we need to keep up with this certain amount of stuff so that you don't develop backlogs and issues. And then I'm helping with their like with their process. I'm helping develop tools to where they can track things easier and streamline communication with consultants and like all these things to make it to where they don't feel like they're going to get as buried as easily. Um, but like I don't know. I don't know if there's. I think you gotta. Whenever you hire people, it's kind of 50-50 whether you're going to get somebody that wants to that wants to take the extra, effort, or you get somebody that's very cool with just doing the bare minimum and leaving at 5 o'clock and that's kind of it. But I think selling the big picture is always helpful. I think the DOT is a cool. It's easier to sell the big picture here because you're not necessarily benefiting like an individual who owns a company. Like you're benefiting the state. Like you're benefiting, all these. You're creating a transportation system for. I mean, you're designing like I keep on bringing it back to the people that I manage, but I always sell like you're literally designing the pavement that the entire state is driving on. You're designing all the pavements for the entire highway system. So it's a cool job. So let's do it well. Like let's do it as good as we can and make this process as smooth as possible for everyone. Because it's like one of these projects are done, like here in 20 years, like that road still people are still going to be driving on it. You can take pride in that and everything. So I think it is easier to sell here than it is like for consulting firms. I used to work in consulting. You get kind of miserable, especially if you don't feel like you're making forward progress there. But here, I think you almost have to sell that part of it here because there aren't maybe particular other benefits to working here too. But
Well put.
yeah,
Kim, I've been dominating the questions. What do you have any questions?
No, I think Bryce has definitely covered all of the aspects. Like, I don't really have any follow-up questions. I think it was very thorough. And but while you were talking, I had the thought of, not how some people don't necessarily want to go above and beyond. I think when it comes to that's when like team dynamic comes in. Because if you like your coworkers,
yes,
okay, I see that they're drowning, I can step up. But like
100%.
if they're a piece of work and I don't like them, I'm
Yes.
going to do the bare minimum. So
Well,
that was,
so I think, we can go into the whole remote work thing. I think there's benefits to remote work, obviously, but that you lose that dynamic of a team and a group. It's just hard to keep that going through a Teams meeting. Like you just can't, like you can literally see someone right next to you struggling and you can ask them for help. Like if you have to proactively, they have to either message you or whatever and ask for help. Like sometimes people are awkward, but if you can like see them and be like, hey, do you need help? It's a lot easier. Like I'm trying to build that back. That's a big thing. Like I said here, everyone was brought back in the office 2 Mondays ago. So the idea behind that is not just to be mean, but is like they felt like the leadership here felt like they were losing that part of the DOT. So they're trying to bring everyone in to build up the camaraderie, build up the team, and then also like be able to identify like future leadership. Like it's really hard to identify people's and be able to judge people's character and morals and stuff through like teams. I don't know. Like it's just very different. So, but if you see everyone day to day, how they handle themselves, like how they handle their work, how much pride they show in their work in person, like I think that's how you kind of figure out who's going to be the next people to fill in these roles here. So it's a big thing. I don't know. I'm very old school. I don't know. I like the in-person work, but I get certain people's situations for sure with remote stuff. But I think for our type of stuff, it is helpful to, especially if you have all these different departments I mean, we're supposed to be in the same building, but whenever you get different departments, in different houses, like it's just really hard to keep that flow going with communication. But literally the last couple of weeks, even I feel like it's getting better, and the leadership is emphasizing it. Like we all got to talk to each other to make this work, and so I have my little role in it, but there's a lot of other people doing kind of the same stuff in different categories too. So.
Yeah, I think the return to office discussions kind of ramped up last year around the country, where you started hearing more of that, and it's a painful process. As a manager, I like the flexibility of having options for my people, because some of them I think would be better off if they were working from home completely, because they don't really care about interacting with people and they really aren't going to do it anyway. They won't do it.
Yeah, sure.
They'll be productive, but that's not something that they're going to do. It's certainly not going to make certain people who are not interested in communicating in person start doing it. But there are those people that really want to be there are going to flourish. You're going to develop leadership better. Uh, it's not a great long-term solution for an organization to have everybody completely remote, because it's hard to build up those relationships and leaderships. But there are certainly elements where it is very good and
Oh yeah, I
should
think
be maintained.
I think the plan eventually is to have it as a tool, like as it's just not like you every week get to be home. I think the idea is like at least a couple days a week, to have that where you come in. But like for now, they basically had to make a hard line. Everybody's in. We're all here. And then I think here in probably a couple months, they're going to relax a little bit, to where we're like, okay, we've weeded out the people that are just like, okay, I can't do it. I can't do this at all. Um, and then the managers can use it, like you said, as a tool for like certain individuals where it makes sense. But then it's still on the manager to make sure that they can obviously, manage those tasks, make sure their tasks are being performed, and they're also working within the group dynamic and building the group dynamic up. But it's just like it is easier in person, but there are some people that literally are miserable in this office. So
Yep.
it is what it is. I think you got to be able to accommodate, especially like you can't be super picky at the DOT. It is hard. Like it is hard to get people to come here anyway. So whenever you start taking away like benefits like that, it's making it even harder to get bodies in here. But I get the idea. I mean, it is a thing. I think you almost had to be super drastic about it, and then just see what happens, and then over time you can kind of use that as like I said, kind of a nice, say this week you got some stuff that it makes sense for you to work, like you got stuff like, hey, go work from remote this week, but you can't just assume that's what your week's going to be every week, I guess.
Right.
So for sure.
Yep.
I
Agreed.
think it's kind of funny that we all represent, I think, very different viewpoints on this. I'm not going to get into my viewpoints about work from home, because it is definitely like remote work it's the full spectrum. But as we're doing it, I feel like we represent the full spectrum here, because I definitely have
I know
other thoughts. But again,
we have one thing I have seen with it obviously there are individuals. One of the individuals I manage, like this is the only way she can work is remote. So like it 100% is necessary. I think at the DOT level, like I think this was all kind of before we even worked here, but they had a certain. They talk about it's like a culture. It's like a whole culture thing where they're like, like they wanted, and just a lot of the people that work here, obviously there's like older people. It's a lot of it is a generational thing. Just, it's like I survived working in person for 40 years. Why can't you show up? It's a lot of that. So it's that. But, like the overall thing, I get it. But I think like this is almost like this is a temporary, like, we're going old school for a little bit, but then we are going to be more modern and understand, because there's no way you're going to keep people. Like, I mean, you'll be able to keep some, but you're going to lose probably a lot of good ones as well. So you got to be able to accommodate, like if all the consultants are allowing people to work remotely and make more money and do all this stuff, like how are you ever gonna keep anyone here? So it is for sure.
Cool titles. That's how you keep people. That's why people care about their titles. Full circle there to that. The cool title will keep me there.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's the one thing you get here is you get a fun title, pretty much for sure. For sure.
All right. Well, Bryce, Thank you for your time. Did we miss anything? Is there anything you wanted to talk about that we didn't touch on today?
I don't think so. There's just a lot of different, a lot of the big geotechy stuff that I'm working on are just, it's all process improvement stuff. So it's a lot of like, how, from the beginning of the project, like from project initiation all the way to like final plan submittal, like how can the geotech stuff within that be done more efficiently? But we don't need to go in the weeds. Like it's you don't want to go that far into it. But I feel like we're making progress. Like it is a lot of me kind of communicating with the consultants and the designers, and we are figuring out processes that I think work for everybody. I this year I am rewriting the our specification. So our geotech spec that all the consultants use to perform all the field work and lab work and reporting. I'm going to kind of be rewriting that with the I'm getting a lot of like help from the designers, like figuring out exactly what they need, what information there is actually required. Like there's been a lot of different situations over the last 2 years that I've seen that present kind of gray areas. Like they don't necessarily know what process to follow in certain situations. So I'm going to kind of use those situations to kind of add stuff into the spec and then basically submit it out to consultants. Because one thing that so the consultants own a lot of equipment already. So it's not like I can propose all these random tests that nobody's ever heard of. It needs to be cost effective and all this stuff. But if there is stuff that is changing, like potentially like drilling methods or something like that, I'm going to reach out to them and kind of get some feedback from them to make sure it's cost effective and the equipment's even available or people actually own it. That kind of stuff. It's just going to be a lot of making sure that our future improvements are actually achievable when it comes to field stuff. But that's it. And then payment design, we are so we are still a state that does mainly 93 AASHTO. We are trying to work towards doing pavement in me. My goal is hopefully by the end of next year or kind of early 2027, we'll kind of have a full pavement in me design process. We are going through kind of a lot of these states are going through this, but it's all like these calibrations and making sure like what we're doing makes sense, and also convincing these districts that this new method for pavement design is actually going to benefit them, because typically the sections that are recommended come back a little bit thinner, so they are cheaper, but they're scared to death that they're going to fail. But you have to explain the science to them and get them on board. A lot of these districts and stuff like that, they have kind of minimum payment sections that they're very used to. So if you go away from that, red flags start going off. It's just kind of the thing. So it's going to be a lot of me and the pavement engineers hopefully educating them on how this can improve, how this can save money in the future, like why it's okay to potentially reduce things, like talk about the materials and explain in more complex way how these pavements will fail in the future. And you don't just necessarily have to throw a bunch of material at something for it to last a long time. You can kind of analyze it, kind of a more advanced way than what we're currently doing. But yeah, whenever that's done, that's gonna be great. That's the big thing that if I get pavement ME implemented here, that's gonna be the big one for me. But that's just gonna be a process for sure. But
Well, that sounds like you've been an awful lot for 2025
yeah,
in the
schedule's filled up.
consensus
Yeah.
processes
Yeah.
and standards writing and
Yeah.
implementation, trying to get all the districts on board.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think I mean, it's some of it may be engineering, but my job is more not engineering. It's all
Yeah.
get everybody on the same page with processes. I feel like a lot, but it's good for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. We may have to circle back with you next year to see how that went, because that's
Sure.
I have so many questions for you, because like when I learned
I'll
about
be
the
a recurring
districts,
guest as much as you need me.
yeah.
I will do my best. This is I think a cool one because it literally it came from nothing. Like I mean, geotech has obviously always been done, but this whole group like figuring out what this is going to be like. I think next year hopefully I'll have some additional staff working with me. There's going to be kind of a whole. Hopefully growth is happening. Hopefully it's not me coming in saying the exact same, stuff next year. But there should be kind of noticeable improvement, because I thought it was only 1 year last, but it was like 2 years that I talked to you guys last. So there has been a bunch of stuff kind of happened in that time. But yeah, this next year we have some like big ticket items that if I can get these accomplished, I feel like we'll be in a pretty good spot going forward for sure. So.
Sounds good. All right, we will set up a save the date for that one, and
That's good.
we will document your entire career at ODOT.
I love
I mean, you know what? I need this. Yeah, I need my wife needs to listen to this so she actually knows what I'm doing here. I think
Yeah.
that'll be good for sure. Like she'll get a yearly update. I don't want to bore with my work and whenever we go home too much. So listen to this every year. You'll be good.
You'll be good. This is what I'm doing. Send it to your family
you're
instead of
fine.
like a holiday card. Like, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah,
This is what happens.
You don't need to know the
work.
details. This is what you got.
I love it. Well, thank you for joining us. And I wanted to let everybody know about our AASHTO Resource Technical Exchange happening in Bellevue, Washington, March 17th through the 20th, 2025. And as of the recording of this, the registration is open. So we hope to see you there. Thanks for listening to AASHTO Resource Q&A. If you'd like to be a guest or just submit a question, send us an email at podcast@ashtoresource.org or call Brian at 240-436-4820. For other news and related content, check out AASHTO Resource's social media accounts or go to ashtoresource.org.